Morning, and it's time for us to have our conversation in the studio. With us is a lecturer from the Federal College of Education Technical here in Asaba. He is Mr. Anthony Achi. You're very much welcome. Good morning, right?
Thank you very much.
Good to have you, sir.
Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning, Deltas.
Good to have you. Now, the conversation today is one that we have been conversing about all week long. It's one that happened during the inauguration of our president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It's about the removal of the fuel subsidy. Our conversation this morning is about the realities it has on the average Nigerian. Now, what's your perspective about the removal of the fuel subsidy? Let's start from there.
The removal of the subsidy is actually a welcome development. Looking at where Nigeria is coming from economically. It has been a long one. It actually started with the then regime of the head of state, Olusegun Obasanjo, in the 70s. Actually, in 1977, that was when the Price Control Act came into existence, and the effect was when our refinery started breaking down, and there was need to take fuel out of the country to be refined, and which would be imported back. And between, according to CBN statistics, between 2016, when the immediate past president took over, to 2023, when he left office, Nigeria has spent 26 billion US dollars, which is about 11.7 trillion naira on subsidy. And that's a huge amount of money that will come out from an economy that is almost that is dwindling. And so there is need for this removal. Now, in 2012, January precisely, the former president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, also wanted this subsidy removed. But you know, there was this protest from opposition and civil society that he was just at the middle of this protest, and it was called Occupy Lagos, where Nigeria was almost shut down because the campaign there was going to have adverse effects on the ordinary person on the street, because Nigeria depended much on fuel. And so an average household depends on fuel in either way.
Yes.
Fuel supply of electricity, that's what you need to run your generator. So many the vehicles on the road, we have more of the fuel powered engines than you have the diesel. And so whatever happens to the price of fuel have adverse effect on the average man. So the thing is, though it is a welcome development, but it ought to be planned.
Okay.
It should be systematic. They should have short-term and long-term palliative to cushion the effect of the subsidy. Because if you remove this subsidy, remember, the export and import of fuel right now is in the hands of the independent marketers.
Yes.
So government have little regulation, and that's why you see there is this difference in terms of the pump price of petroleum across the country. What pump station A will sell is different from what the marketer B will sell.
Yeah.
So this is where government really have to come in. Now the question that we, the average people on the street, is asking is, what plans? Is it just announcing that subsidy has been removed? What is the short-term plan, which is the immediate effect? Because immediately it was announced on the day of inauguration, all the filling stations have adjusted their pump prices.
Yes.
Now, what plan has government announced to take care of this adverse effect? That's what we want to hear from government. Because before you know it, the prices of things in the market have also increased.
Yes. Okay, now we're talking about fuel subsidy, but the average Nigerian really do not understand what subsidy is. Yes, they don't understand the meaning of subsidy. And when you don't understand something, there's every tendency that you see the thing as being wicked.
Yeah.
Now, can you throw more light on subsidy, and why do you think the removal is a welcomed development?
Okay. Our refineries are broke down, so we do not refine crude as it were, which gives, and the byproducts of our crude, including the premium motor spirit, that's the one we call fuel, the diesel, kerosene, and so on, bitumen that is used for construction. So what happens is that crude is extracted and is now taken abroad into Europe to refineries that are there, is refined and is also now exported back to Nigeria. Now a lot of things goes into this. When it's leaving the shores of Nigeria, payments are made for custom duties. When it's coming back, the same thing. So the cost of producing 1 liter of fuel, if it were to be refined maybe somewhere in Warri, let's assume, we are taking a hypothetical figure, let's assume it ought to be like $1. By the time it goes through this process, it has gone up to $5. And so when this fuel comes back, because we depend so much on fuel, government has said, okay, the cost of taking it out and bringing it back, what is going to cost per liter will be very, very high. So government decided to cushion to pay the difference between that cost that they believe that this is what an average Nigerian can afford. That is that subsidy. So government is now saying that amount that they used to pay,
yes,
to make sure that the fuel is now affordable, they want to remove it. They don't want to pay anymore, because a lot of things are even surrounding this subsidy that it becomes one of the most controversial issues in Nigeria today. You know, they said we have invisible hands, we have invisible marketers, and so on and so forth.
And some marketers who claim they imported 200,
yes,
whereas they imported
the quantity
10.
they imported was not up to.
Yes.
So that is the issue surrounding subsidy. And government now believe that if we stop paying this money, we can channel this money to something else that will help Nigerians. So that is what subsidy is all about.
Okay,
now,
well clarified.
It's quite strong when you made a statement about over 11 trillion naira being spent on fuel subsidy.
11.7.
11.7 trillion naira being spent over the years, and nothing is being accounted for. You know, we can talk about building of refineries and the rest of them. There are those who believe strongly that, you know, perpetrators, people who have been involved in this fuel business, should be apprehended, arrested, tried. Do you think that this might, you know, create some kind of confidence for the part of the people if they see some level of justice meted out against fuel marketers who might have exploited the Nigerian economy to their own favor?
Well, I think there are laws that stipulate that should be, but my fear is with the type of judiciary that we have, with the type of legal system that we have, would that work? Because ordinarily, when it comes to the business of importation and exportation, it is based on records. If I am an inspector, a custom official at the port, where a quantity of crude arrives in a vessel, I should be able to tell that what I've inspected is this amount of liters of fuel that have come in. So you begin to query, if we do not have people who are saddled with this responsibility to make sure that this over-invoicing, fraudulent act, falsification of documents are checkmated. So the problem is it boils down to this corrupt system. Sometimes you find out people tell you that petroleum business is like an occult group, because the more you begin to investigate an issue, the deeper you begin to find out that it's not as you see. And so I'm not saying that it's not possible to bring, because some have been brought to justice, but you see that there are bigger ones that are behind that it looks like they're untouchable and they are not visible. So I think it's time that the average Nigerian on the street, because I used to tell people that the average man on the street is more powerful than any system. But the truth is, we have wallowed in ignorance for too long, and we do not know what to do for it. Let me give you an instance. If we elect as electorate of a particular constituency, we decide to vote for somebody to represent us in a government, either at the state or the federal, there are provisions in the constitution and the law that gives us the power to recall the person if he's not living up to the mandate given to him. But when you go out to the street to ask the average Nigerian, they will tell you they have never heard about that. They don't even know that such thing exists.
Yes.
I think it's time, especially those of you in the media, we begin to educate our people, we begin to educate ourselves that we have this power. These are the machineries or the mechanisms that are put in place that we can begin to look into this. Let's call for auditing. Let's look into the papers. We have all, as long as you're a taxpayer in this country, you have the right to look into whatever that concerns you. I think when we start from there, we'll begin to get results. Not leaving it to agencies that is already corrupt, or that the fabric of corruption have eaten deep into them.
Okay.
That's my take on this.
All right, so with your clear explanation about the full meaning of subsidy for the better understanding of the common man, how about your assessment? What's the right time? What right time do you think the fuel subsidy is supposed to be removed? Because people are saying our president just got into office. In fact, he hasn't even stepped in, just the inaugural speech, and he removed the fuel subsidy. Some persons are of the opinion that he should have waited, till he has gone into seat, balanced, and see all there is to know about what he's to take over from before making such pronouncements about removing subsidy. Do you agree with that, or do you think, yes, it was actually the right time for him to make such pronouncements?
What's an overall speech, crying out loud?
Well, I think a clarification needs to be made here before I take a position. Now, government is a continuum. There shouldn't be any vacuum in terms of policies and implementation of programs. And moreover, the government that has given birth to this new the government that have handed over to this new government, they are of the same political party. So I really do not see much difference, because based on the manifesto of the party, they are going to run similar programs. But talking about the timeliness of the subsidy, I think the immediate past government has started preparing the minds of Nigeria that even all the major presidential aspirants, it was part of their campaign promises that they were also going to remove subsidy. But I think the approach, like I said earlier, before you remove subsidy, consider the over 200 million Nigerians and the over 130-something million Nigerians who are living below the average, the poverty line. That what effect is it going to have on them? Whether the subsidy is announced in December or is announced in 2024. What makes the difference is what plan, short-term plans that have been put in place. For instance, fuel is being sold at about between 510 to 700 naira, depending on the place where you are buying yours. Okay. Now that is over 100% increase, and that is going to have effect on the prices of everything that is around. Transportation fuel, the cost of transportation have increased. In fact, a lot of people have parked their vehicles, and some people are beginning to walk short distances, and so on and so forth. Now, that is really a very big one, a very bad one for us. Then, incidentally, at the end of the day, you discover that it's going to have much long-time effect if these palliatives are not put in place. Okay. The salary earner goes on with about 200,000, only for him to get to the market. What 200,000 naira can take cannot take half. That is bad. So government should have also announced that while we are removing this subsidy, this is the plan put in place for the average man on the street, for the civil servant, for the salary earner, and for even institutions. So that, because one thing that is going to come on us is, especially those who have children, the schools are going to increase fees, because we all go to the same market, we buy from the same source, and so on and so forth. So for me, the timing of the subsidy is not the problem, but
the approach.
What plans have you put in place to cushion the effect? For me, I think is too early, because the present government have inherited a budget that they did not make. And so they ought to have sat down to look at what provisions have been made in terms of taking care of the effects or the consequences of the subsidy removal before announcing it. And the other end, some of us Nigerians who are clamoring for a better society, a better country, also have not done well, because his pronouncement is that the subsidy take effect from July 1st.
Yeah, I was going to get there.
Now, we are not yet in July, if I may recall.
Yes.
We are still in June. And before you know, the independent marketers have started. So it calls for, in fact, a lot of us have been saying that wherever task force that are in place should begin to checkmate what is going on, because subsidy as it were have not taken effect legally.
The removal has not been done yet.
So it was just a pronouncement that, just like I said, you need to prepare the mind of the people. And maybe I want to believe that the government of the day, although I'm not part of it, I want to believe that in the next few weeks, they should also be thinking to announce whatever measures or palliative they are put in place to cushion the effect of the subsidy. So the independent marketers should be checkmated, because they are now the problem we have right now before the subsidy proper will happen. Who knows when the subsidy is finally removed? Maybe the prices of fuel that we are seeing might even go higher than what it is now.
Is there any part of fairness? Is there anything about fairness on the part of filling stations that had to increase their prices, economically speaking? Because I was on Twitter, I saw somebody trying to put something down, and I was in a very, very hurt mood to assimilate what he was saying, that filling stations too have to increase their prices to meet with their own realities. And I was wondering, if there is any part that says, okay, these people had to do this for their own business to survive.
In fact, there is no moral justification for that. One of our principles in this country is the principle of egalitarianism. And the market is ruled. In fact, our economy exists by the interplay between the forces of demand and supply. Just the way you buy, that's how you sell.
Yeah.
Now, you already have, in fact, I noticed even in town, there are a lot of filling stations that had fuel that have not been selling, all of a sudden opened their pumps and they started selling.
Yes.
So meaning that they are selling old stock. And when you say subsidy take effect from January and July 1st, mind you, some persons have already received payment for subsidy.
Yes.
For stocks that might still be on the high sea coming. So in effect, we are saying that these persons are cashing into because of the pronouncement, which is not fair. Which is not fair, which is very, very wrong. And I think I'm calling on the task force that are responsible for monitoring of sales of petroleum products to move into action quickly, because this is it's a devastating state.
Now, if the task force moves into action and the filling stations start to sell at the normal price, let's say, and Nigerians are quite aware that come July, the fuel subsidy will be officially removed, wouldn't it create another issue of buying of excess fuel and holding in the country as well?
Let me also tell you that even at present, people are already doing that. Because those who understand economics knows that they just pronounced it and it's July 1st. That come July 1st. Because right now, government might not be able to regulate. Let's take for instance, I'm an independent marketer. I bring my fuel from Portugal. You bring yours from Sweden. She brings us from England. Okay. Now, be rest assured that we are not going to get our landing cost will not be the same.
Yes.
And you will not expect us to sell at uniform price. Now, if you also want us to sell at uniform price, so one of us will be making much profit, because my cost is much lower. So at the end of the day, when subsidy is finally removed completely, you discover that it might be very difficult to have a uniform pump price across all the pump filling stations in the country. And so people already understand this market dynamics, and so you will not be able to run away from that. And that also will create another problem. We begin to face a lot of hazards. And That's why, all the agencies that are involved should begin to work. Because if we understand that by July 1st, this is how it's going to look like, because it was just a pronouncement. We've not gotten details. If Nigerians get details, it helps us to prepare very well. And for government, they should also know that in most developed countries of the world, there is the emphasis on people using their private vehicles mostly within the weekdays. Government should begin to think of developing our transport system in the country, our waterways, where if I buy bulk tickets, for instance, it should carry me for a long time with a high level of discount. I think that the time has come, because what will happen in months to come is better imagined than said. Because somebody was telling me that in his place, that people cook now with watching their food. I said, he said that the hunger that is in the land is getting higher and higher on a daily basis. And so if fuel, which has become a major source of power for us, is going this way, I begin to imagine where we are heading to.
Do you think the Dangote refinery would save the situation? Because there's much excitement about Dangote refinery coming to be, and it's about to, I think we'll start production in June or thereabout. Do you think that's going to save the situation for Nigeria?
In the short term, no. In the long term, yes. No. Because we consume about 7 million liters of fuel daily. And so, when you are starting a refinery, you don't stretch production to its maximum. So with time, that refinery will do us good, but in the short term, it will not be able to serve the needs of Nigeria.
Okay. So who actually benefits? Now we talk about fuel subsidy. Who actually benefits more from the removal of fuel subsidy?
Well, economically, it's actually the end user, which is the common person on the street.
The average Nigerian?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the truth. But there's also price to be paid for that. Now, if I'm supposed to buy fuel for 1,000 naira per liter, and government decide to pay the difference of 700 naira, indirectly, the aftermath of that economic activity helps the price of things to be on the minimal level. So at the end of the day, every Nigerian who have a direct or indirect use of fuel benefits. But logically, when you look at the scenario, a lot of people have gone into, for instance, a few persons, I don't want to mention them, a few persons who have been, justice have taken its course concerning them, are people who they said they imported much and they never imported any. Yes. Documents were falsified. And I think that is where the headache of the subsidy is hinging on. Invariably, it becomes an avenue to rob the average Nigerian who was supposed to benefit from this subsidy. And so hence, removing it helps to save that amount of money. But the question is, will the money be channeled to sources where the average Nigerian also benefits?
That's a very deep question. And then another thought is that some people have thought about it and said, the removal of fuel subsidy, or rather having fuel subsidy, did energize the Nigerian business sector. Knowing how we have electricity issues in Nigeria, and knowing that electricity is supposed to be our main source of running business via the energy it brings. Yeah. So do you think Nigeria is ripe enough with the comatose we have in terms of electrical power to indulge, I'm using that word deliberately, in removal of fuel subsidy now?
Yeah, in fact, I always say that we have metamorphosed to a state, in fact, we are in a state of oblivion when it comes to power supply. And if government, maybe when it was thinking of privatizing the electricity sector, they never foresaw that we were going to move from, we were going to go back to Egypt, as it were. Because an average home have maybe 1 or 2 generator sets, and it depends on fuel. That is how all small businesses in the country is running. I don't think, like I said, the short-term plan, once it comes out, the blueprint, is going to help. But if it doesn't come, then the removal of the subsidy, this is one of the negative impact it's going to have. Because imagine if you decide to, which one do you fuel? Is it the generator in the workplace or the generator at home? You have to make your choice. And it's going to, if government begin to roll out the blueprints they have to cushion the effect of the subsidy, especially along this line. You know, a lot of us have been clamoring for like green energy. You know, that is high time we government begin to invest in various form of source of power that will help us in this country. If we have electric cars or solar powered vehicles on the road, it's also going to help us to pay much less emphasis on fuel, because a lot of countries are beginning to go that way. And before you know, in decades to come, the demand for our fuel too is going to drop. It's going to drop because when I've seen a lot of electric vehicles, and you see they are very, very efficient and wonderful. So I think government should begin to look at generating alternative source of power outside our hydro electricity.
Okay, so it's been observed that the removal of fuel subsidy could cause inflation and also reduce economic welfare, hurt the economic growth, and also reduce household income,
yes,
and make some firm less competitive.
Yes.
Now, how can the average Nigeria overcome such challenge?
That's a very deep one. You know, there are certain things that an average person on the street does not really have much power to do, and when it comes to policy issues, and this is a policy issue.
Yeah.
Because earnings, let me start with the civil servant. If nothing happens to your earnings at the end of the month, definitely you have the option to cut down or look for alternative source of income. But I think that's where everybody is going to go to at the moment. And that's going to impact on productivity as well. And the overall effect is that it's going to affect the aggregate economic growth of the country. Because if someone begin to multitask, you know, definitely one of the job is going to suffer from multitasking. Because but if government also increases income, the question is, where are they going to get the money? Because the statistics we have shows that the immediate past government we are indebted at the point of leaving office. Nigeria is owing $167 billion, which is about 77 trillion naira, both to foreign and local creditors. Now, meaning that about 96% of our GDP is spent to service debt. So it shows that if the average individual on the street, you know, at the end, your earnings, there is a tax deduction, and that goes as a source of income for government. And if the prices of things goes up, you know, definitely government will also want to review such. And at the end of the day, we begin to run a vicious circle. And that vicious circle is a vicious circle of poverty. It's going to impact on the economy so badly. And inflation is not a good thing for any country. It also affects the value of our currency compared to other currencies of the world. So, which also might affect our foreign reserve.
Okay, Mr. Anthony, actually, it's been beautiful having this conversation with you. You have really been eloquent, and you have broken down fuel subsidy removal as much as it could be, and to the average Nigerian. We hope that it's going to turn out to be a light at the end of the tunnel for Nigerians, as the fuel subsidy is about to be removed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Anthony Achi is a lecturer at the Federal College of Education Technical right here in Asaba. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
The show continues. When we come back, we shall review the papers. Do stay with us.